I'm Brad Carlson with the University of Minnesota Extension, and welcome to part 3 in our series on buying a used farm tractor. In parts 1 and 2, we talked about evaluating the tasks that you need to accomplish on your property and on tractor size and configuration. In this part, we're going to focus on a tractor's age. As you narrow your search for the perfect tractor, you'll obviously have a price in mind. It's intuitive that the newer a tractor is, the more expensive it is. But what are you getting for your money? Well, obviously, a newer tractor has less wear and tear on it, but as we move from tractor technology from the 1950s to the 1970s, there was great advancement in technology. Often these days, when we think of technology, you think electronics, but when it comes to farm tractors, that technology was much more mechanical in nature. We're going to talk about some of those advancements right now. In the early part of the 20th century, engineers were much more focused on the business end of a tractor. It was only starting in the 1960s that the safety of the operator began to be a consideration. We see some great differences between these two tractors. The one from the 1970s, first and foremost, has the rollover protective system, or ROPS as it is known as, which will protect the operator in case of an unlikely rollover of the tractor, and also features seat belts. Our 1950s tractor does not have these features. Two more features that you might want to focus on are lights and power steering. While these seem like creature comforts, power steering allows you to maintain much better control over a tractor, and lights will increase safety when extending your workday. In addition, tractor-mounted flashing lights increase safety when traveling on public roadways. Both of these features came about in the late 1950s and typically were options on tractors until the 1970s. So while they may be available on our tractor from the 1950s, or this tractor may have been retrofitted at a later point of time with these features, they definitely are not standard, and they are things to be looking for. Let's talk about the business end of the tractor. All tractors obviously have a drawbar to pull implements with, but what is also important is a three-point hitch. The three-point hitch, which provides lift power and pulling power on many implements, first became available on farm tractors in the 1940s, but was really only readily available in the 1950s and was primarily just an option in the 1960s. It was only in the 1970s that this lift system became standard, and it remains the standard today. So it is definitely something you will want to look for when looking at a used tractor. Let's talk a little bit about the power takeoff and the hydraulics on the tractor. The power takeoff is a shaft which comes out of the rear end of the tractor and spins and powers many of the implements that you're going to pull behind the tractor. While these have been standard on most farm tractors since the 1930s, typically they were configured in a way so that they only were spinning while the tractor was moving forward. It was only starting in the 1960s that tractors had what was termed as live PTO, meaning that you were able to keep the PTO spinning while the tractor was not moving forward. And while this seems trivial, believe me, once you have a tractor that you need to use for operations on your property, you're going to find this invaluable. The hydraulics on the tractor provides fluid power, which both lifts implements off the ground and also provides power for spinning orbital motors, which also power some of the things that we need to use on our property. Hydraulics first became available on tractors in the 1950s and really became standard in the 1960s. Like power takeoffs, they frequently were coupled with the transmission, meaning that the tractor had to be moving forward in order for the hydraulics to be working. This, of course, is greatly inconvenient if you get yourself stuck somewhere or if you need to run an orbital motor with them. It's very important to have live hydraulic power, meaning that the hydraulics work regardless of whether the tractor is moving forward. This is a very important feature to be looking for when purchasing a used tractor. The last point we want to talk about is the tractor's engine. Older tractors had gasoline engines. This is convenient for you on your farm because it's burning the same fuel as your lawnmowers and other outdoor power equipment, as well as your cars, characterized by having spark plugs and a distributor. In the 1960s and throughout the 1970s, diesel engines became the standard for industrial power, as with farm tractors. Diesel engines are much more economical to use, and they provide much more power than a gasoline engine. Diesel engines may be less convenient for you because you may not be using diesel fuel on other vehicles in your yard. So which is right for you, you need to decide. Is it the economy and power of a diesel engine, or is it the convenience of gasoline? This concludes part 3 on selecting a used farm tractor. Join us for part 4 when we're going to talk about tractor maintenance. Ooh.